to this event, the CCJ Poetry of Prayer. Let me introduce Yoram. Yoram's our presenter today, an award-winning poet, a slam poet. For those who don't know what slam poetry is, I'll let Yoram explain that as well. Yoram, all yours.
All righty. Hello, everybody. Okay, let's just start. Okay, also acknowledging the traditional owners of the land, the Bunurong people of the nations. We stand on lands never ceded, where sovereignty was never extinguished. We, it's been a year and a half since I've performed, so it's been a while since I've had this on the head, but we acknowledge their elders past, present, and emerging. Okay, so I want to start with, I guess, a brief introduction to what slam poetry is, I guess, and what I do with it, and why I'm presenting a workshop on prayer. So slam is a form of poetry. It owes a lot to many different groups. Obviously, one of the biggest that it owes its influence to is African-American communities and various other communities. And it's just a current form of poetry that I've participated in and is a bit of a buzzword. And so, we used it there. Now, the reason why I link prayer and poetry together, it's funny, I'm talking to you and to you simultaneously. We'll get the hang of it. Is a poem is when you use words out loud to express what's inside of you and project it out into the world. And you literally use your body as instrument, connecting thoughts in the mind, emotions through the body, channeled out through the voice, and that is poetry. And to me, prayer is precisely the same thing. And I kind of see almost no difference between what I call poetry, which is the expression using the self as instrument to project out to the world, and prayer. And so to kick off, I'll start with a brief poem, and then we'll get into some aspects of prayer. So since the dawning of time, human beings have gathered in circles, around a fire, around a watering hole, around a dinner party table, and in places like this on Zoom, to tell stories and share knowledge, to teach the next generations the ancient histories and secret mysteries stored in the collective consciousness of the human race, in the sagas and the songs and the words and the rhymes, in the original articulations of the human heart and the human mind that we call poetry. Because poetry is prophecy, and prophecy is always written in poetry. You see, up on a stage, a speaker connects to the most ancient of traditions. They become a link in the chain of transmission that stretches across every culture and all time, and the audience also connects to that ancient tradition. Sitting here, you become links in that same chain of transmission that stretches across all cultures and all times. You and me and the words form one single web of interconnection that connects us all to each other and to everyone across all cultures and all times, because poetry is prophecy, and prophecy is always written in poetry. Because up on stage, because a poem is not simply in the mind of the poet, or even written in the words on the page, but only here, up on the stage in the act of speaking out loud, to share the song and the sound, to create connection between the speaker and the crowd. Our words are transformed by magical alchemy. And there becomes an energy that snaps and cracks between you and me, and the poetry emerges in that space between the heart of the speaker and the heart of the listener. The words and the reactions together, like a writer and a reader and a DJ and a dancer and a congregation and a preacher and a speaker and a listener, all together, we generate the act of art between us, because it's all about sharing the words. It's all about sharing the words. It's all about sharing the words. Thank you. Yeah. Funny applauses on Zoom. Okay, so now let me do a screen share and get up what I've prepared here. Can everyone see that okay? Yes, no, yeah, okay. My audience here can't, so they're just going to hear it. They're just going to hear it given to them. So I've been asked to do something about poetry and prayer. I myself am Jewish, so I only feel qualified to talk about poetry from prayer from a Jewish perspective. So I'm just going to give over that, and I'm not even going to attempt to try and universalize this. This is a specific angle on what prayer is. And the point is that as much as I can, I just want to share this Jewish concept, and any part of it that makes sense to anybody, just feel free to take it and incorporate it into whatever you do. It's just a set of tools. They're not a dogma. Some of them are sort of my own slant on things, so take it from where you will, but we'll start. There's 5 main elements in Jewish prayer. And the first one, there we go. Jewish prayer is fundamentally using your voice out loud. Okay? It is not meditation. Meditation is a separate practice, a beneficial practice, a great practice. Prayer is not meditation. Prayer is literally the vocalization of stuff inside, which we'll get into in a second, out loud, out into the world. That's prayer. It's an energization using the voice of the entire body system. So prayer isn't literally just something you do with the mouth or with the brain or even with the heart. It's an integration of the entire system working together. Okay. Using voice out loud is the energization and affirmation of your own existence in the world. And the reason why that is the cornerstone of the whole of prayer is because the very fact that you're alive and you exist is the will of God manifest right here, right now. And that you have to recognize that your existence is meant to be in the universe. And you have to really take hold of that and be saying every day, I exist and it's a good thing. And this being here is exactly what the universe is manifesting right now. And that's the number one thing, is that you are using your voice to affirm your own self in the universe. Okay, moving on. The ancient Jewish mysticism, known as the Kabbalah. I don't want to make, I don't know what the word is, conclusive statements, but I'm going to frame it like this. One of the earliest works of the Kabbalah is known as the Book of Formation. And it breaks the body down into a schema of 3 areas. You have your head, which is where all of your thought is. You have your body, where all of your emotions are. And connecting between them is the lungs and the breath. And that your head thoughts, your body emotions channel through the mouth out. And so that when we're praying, we are uniting head or intellect, emotion through the voice to project the full essence of ourselves out into the world. Yeah, that's what this slide basically says. Prayer is a full mind, body, soul activity. Use the voice to channel both thought and emotion and project consciousness, boom, out into the universe. Now, okay, now the way we do this in the Jewish tradition is through the Hebrew alphabet and the Hebrew language. So the Hebrew alphabet breaks down into 22 letters, and the Kabbalah teaches that these letters are states of energy vibration, and that the sounds of the letters represent the foundational energy states of the universe and the foundational energy states of the human body. And by vocalizing these vibrations through the body, you use those forces to, again, project what's going on inside you out into the world. Now, each vibration has a double articulation. So we vibrate in the mouth because obviously all letters and all speech is formed in the mouth, right? And we have different parts of the mouth where things are developed, and we articulate with the tongue and then vocalize through the breath. And we do both of those actions simultaneously, and you create a resonance in the mouth that then can resonate right through the brain. There's a second resonance that happens in the body, that each sound will actually vibrate a part of the body. So again, you always have this duality of resonating in one part, resonating in another part, and then a third element that ties it all together. Okay. So we're going to learn one of these chants right now. So there's one word that I picked that's common to, I believe it's common to both Judaism and Christianity. That word is Amen. Amen is said after many prayers, and in the Hebrew language, it comes from the same root word as emunah, which means faith. And so Amen technically believes we believe, or we believe this is true, or I believe this is true, but usually in prayer in a group context, which we'll get into in a minute, it's we believe. So in Hebrew, you have three sound forms that word creates. The ah, the m, and the the n sound. All right, so an ah is the full opening. All right, so if my audience here want to participate, you can. It always, well, you don't have to stand up, but standing up often helps. And if anyone at home wants to do this, you can do it as well. The ah is opening up the channel completely so that you get the resonance coming right through the chest, and you'll feel it vibrating throughout the entire central channel. So you're just like, and then really like close your eyes and feel where that vibration is in your body. Okay, now we'll bring it to the M. So the you're going to feel a resonance right in the mouth on the teeth. And if you notice subtly, you should feel it resonating in the belly as well. So let's just do it. All right, stop. Did everyone feel that actually in the body? Yes? Yes, yes. At home, everyone? Yeah, okay. So that's what we mean by prayer being a full body experience. That when we articulate these sounds the way they are supposed to be articulated, you will feel the sound through your body. So the act of this kind of prayer is a full energization. So the last one is the N, the N, right? So we'll just hum the N for a bit. So it's so what I notice with the N is you get a higher resonance almost up right into the brain and the mouth. And then here it's roughly in the mid-chest, roughly where the heart is. So what an Amen is doing on the body energetic level is you're opening up entirely with the Ah, you root it down into the belly with the M, and then up into the heart with the N. And this is how through your body, you can feel how I believe, because you're rooting it down into the belly and then into the heart, tying it in there. Just through that three sound vibration, you embody the concept of I believe. So we're going to go through the entire Amen. So it's an ah, like that. So I'll do it, and you can repeat it, or you can try and do it with me, either or. There's always a sound delay on these Zoom things, so you can never quite get it in time. But it's basically Amen. So it's going to be Amen, pulling it back up, and it's really like belief right into the heart. All right, we ready? Okay. Amen. Like that. So that's an example. So that concept can then be applied out to every single part of the prayers. And the simplest way to say using the body and using the voice together is what we call song and dance. Now, I'm not going to demonstrate song and dance here, but ultimately, it really is that simple. And yes, it's called, it looks fancy, this arming and ahhing and whatever, but ultimately, we're talking about song and dance, the full energization of the whole system. All right, so now that we know what prayer is, how do we do it in the Jewish tradition? So in the Jewish tradition, it is always done in a group. Always, always, always. Now, you can pray by yourself. Obviously, there's exceptions to every rule, but the standard format is always to pray in a group. That group generally consists of 10 people. There are many, many reasons why there are 10. Is this someone who's trying to come in? Oh no, it's someone in the chat. Ah, cool. Yes, Om chanting, very much so. So the Om is also another similar way of moving energy through the body of the Ah, pulling it up through the system. So yeah, no, absolutely. Now 10. So there's many sort of explanations given for 10. My personal is that 10 is the number for a sort of complete manifestation, and whatever, it's a Kabbalistic thing. But nevertheless, that 10, because it it represents a completeness, is in itself a microcosm of the entire community. So even though you're only praying with this specific 10 people or 9 or 11 or 203, that group represents a microcosm of the entire group of people that are here really on planet Earth. So we're really praying with everybody. Now, we don't just pray with everybody who's currently alive, okay? Because what we do, hold on, is that the prayers always invoke the ancestors. We always say in Hebrew, it's Elokai v'Elokei Avotai, which means our God and the God of our ancestors. So we're always invoking the ancestors, which means that what we're doing on the psychic level is we are joining with a group of people in the present, and we are joining with all the ancestors going back in time. And then, of course, we are also looking forward to the most important generation of people, which is the generation who are yet to be born, who are still barely even figments in the imagination of the human species. And so what we're trying to do is, when we pray in the group, that 10 microcosm, invoking the ancestors and looking forward, is as though we are praying with the entirety of the human race, from the past to the future, linked into the present. It gets better. We then have the times of prayer. So times of prayer is another sort of, the big key in Jewish prayer is that everything is prescribed. There's almost nothing you get to do on your own. Now, I'm not saying whether that's good or bad, it's just what it is. And so in this system, everything is highly prescribed. So the time of prayer is also highly prescribed. Now, the time of prayer is to tie you into the primary movements of the planet as it rotates around its axis relative to the sun. And the times of prayer are always the transitional moments. Okay, so we have a sunrise prayer, an afternoon or a sunset prayer, and a nightfall prayer. And they're always on the planetary transition points. All right, and for the people online, they can see this cute little graphic, and I'll just explain it to everybody else. You've got the Earth, and you've got night on one side, or deep space, and the sun on the other side, and you can see at these transition points exactly where we put our prayers. So we're vocalizing out loud to energize the entire system with a microcosm of people that represents the entirety of the human race at the key moments of the planetary rotation. So you can see what we're doing here. We're actually aligning a whole bunch of forces simultaneously, which brings us to the next point, which is daily practice. The other thing about prayer in the Jewish tradition is it's not something you can do on a whim. It's not something you do when you feel like it. It's done every single day, 3 times a day for your entire life. In the same way that you eat every day, and you eat multiple times a day because it's the only way to keep this particular biochemical system up and running, the spiritual psychic system needs to be tuned at the same regularity. And so I just brought this cute little midrash. A midrash is a legend, I guess, that there are these sages debating the most important verse in the Bible. One of them says, the Lord created man in the image of God. That's the most important thing, that humans are microcosms of the divine. Another one comes and he says, no, the Lord is one. The Lord is your God. The Lord is one, because it's the ultimate article of faith. The next one comes and he says you should love your fellow as yourself, because it's the ultimate expression of the social bond. And the last one says, the first lamb you shall sacrifice in the evening, and the second lamb you shall sacrifice. The first lamb you shall sacrifice in the morning, and the second lamb you shall sacrifice in the evening. A fairly boring and pedestrian verse in the Bible, one would think. And then they conclude that that's the right answer. That as brilliant as any particular practice is, none of them work unless they're practiced continually, daily, repeatedly, like just as part of what you do in life. Okay, now the final part of Jewish prayer, to sort of get it in our heads of what it actually is what we call seder, or the order. So I sort of alluded to this a little earlier, that Jewish prayers are highly prescribed, highly prescribed, which means that I can walk into pretty much any synagogue in the world on any given day and know exactly what they're going to do. I know what they're going to do on a Tuesday. I know what they're going to do on a Saturday. I know what they're going to do depending on which Saturday it is in the year. everything, and it all comes in a book, and the book's in order, and it just gives you everything. Now, again, I've got no idea if this is good or bad. Like, I don't know if this is the best way to approach these things. This is just the tradition that I grew up in, and I'm just giving over what it is. Now, that order, for the purposes of this talk, everything's getting simplified. So I'm only going to talk about what we do in the mornings. But basically, we go through a system of 4 different stages, and these 4 stages supposedly correlate to the 4 dimensions of existence that the Kabbalah speaks about. Now, these 4 dimensions of existence are as follows. There's the lowest dimension that we call action, which is the closest to physicality, or some people think even is physicality. The next step up is what they call formation or imagination, kind of what's going on in the subconscious. The next step up from that they call creation, which is, never fully understood it myself, to be totally brutally honest here, but it's a deeper form. It's where the imagination is at its more basic, almost unarticulated levels, like big, chunky emotions. We're not into the fine filigrees of thought yet. They're just sort of the way a 2-year-old feels about the world, in a way that we still all carry inside us. And then the final level is like pure consciousness, for lack of a better term. So we do 4 phases. We do a phase of what I call morning mindfulnesses. We do a phase of songs. We do a phase of prayers that recognize the creation of the universe itself. And then finally, after all of that, we get to prayer where you actually ask for stuff to happen. So only after that entire process do you start asking for stuff. So the morning mindfulnesses are pretty intense. And it's to get you to, in a way, one of the ways I've kind of looked at this is that the Jewish prayer cycle is a day-long gratitude meditation. It begins when you first become aware that you're awake, and it ends just as you go to sleep, and you do the prayers 3 times a day, and punctuated between them is the way that you deal with food, and the way that you have gratitude and mindfulness over what you eat, how you present the food, who you eat it with, and then the various things you say in gratitude for that food. And so over the whole day, it's just one gratitude after the next, after the next. So the first gratitude obviously is, I'm alive. The second gratitude is, I can see. The third gratitude is literally that ability to move in bed, because sleep is a slight form of paralysis. And so just that ability to move is, again, be aware, be conscious, I have bodily function, I'm alive in the world. Then we get out of bed, and again, it breaks down into very specific order. We swing over the bed and our feet touch the ground, and you say, thank God for making a solid earth. You get up out of bed and straighten the back, and you're like, thank you for giving me a spine to stand straight. And then when you take that first step, it's another blessing over the fact that you're able to move. And then you move into the washing. So again, you go to the bathroom, you make quite an elaborate prayer, thanksgiving for your bodily functions being able to work. Another prayer over washing the hands. Then another prayer or a gratitude over washing the face. Then we get dressed. And again, clothing is one, belt is another, coat is another, shoes is another. Everything that we do that prepares us for our day is a recognition, a gratitude, boom. Now we're out of the house. And what's the first thing you do in the morning? Obviously, you go to the synagogue to pray. What else would you do? So again, we look at these transitions. So when you enter into the synagogue from the space of the rest of the world into this separated out, sanctified space, you're in a transition. So what do? You say a little something. Now that we're in the synagogue, we have to put on extra clothing, because now we're putting on our prayer clothing, or like our magical garments in a way. So there's a prayer shawl, you put it on, again, another recognition. You put on these leather boxes on the arms and on the heads, and again, another recognition. Question. We're only talking about this from the male perspective, right? So the talit and the tefillin at the moment are practiced generally by men. Historically, women allegedly have practiced it all the way through. There's very famous myths about stories of Rashi's daughters and whatnot. I am not speaking for the mainstream of Jewish people here, but I can't see why women shouldn't wear them. I mean, frame it differently. I can't see why anybody shouldn't wear them if they want to wear them. But, you know, I am not claiming to speak for mainstream Judaism when I say that, but yes. I find that when you wear the tefillin, and this is why I think everybody should wear them, it creates a focus in prayer because you've got these things attached, again, to these central energy centers, and it just helps with the entire focus of what you're doing, hand, brain, emotion, and then voice connection all uniting together. It's like, yeah, it really works. And then you say another bunch of stuff, and now you've done all your morning mindfulness. Okay, the next step is this second world where we sing. And a Kabbalist from the 12th century, he pointed out that the word for song in Hebrew is the same word as a pruning hook for a vineyard. It was a kind of like sickle that would use to cut the grapes down. And the reason he says that is he basically says that when you wake up in the morning, the mind, he calls them evil angels, but the mind is full of thoughts and all sorts of crazy thoughts. A lot of us wake up with anger. The first thing we do is we pick up our phones and we look at Facebook, we look at Twitter, we find who's annoyed us today. We start ranting, everything. So in the prayer system, the first thing you've got to do after you've, created these mindfulnesses that you're even just alive in the world is to clear the system out. And the way we clear the system out is by singing. Now, again, I'm not going to do a full demonstration here. I'm not going to get the whole thing, but we sing. Now, in an actual synagogue today, that doesn't happen. Okay, what's actually being practiced on the ground is people mumble their way through it or they speed through it, and especially on a weekday, almost nothing gets sung. But the actual way it's meant to be and how it was in the temple was a full-blown music with an orchestra and the lutes and lyres and pipes and whatnot. And it was a highly musical religion. And the idea of the music is to literally cut down these evil angels, or rather like cut down these evil thoughts and clear the mind out. We move to phase 4, which is now we actually start to acknowledge the universe. So the first is the luminaries that we see, the celestial bodies. Then we acknowledge the role of God through history. Then we do the primary declarations of faith. And then we acknowledge the role of God in the history of the future, i.e. the redemption that will come. And then finally, after all that, we get to the actual prayer itself. So every day, in the Jewish tradition, we pray a prayer of 18 blessings. 18, another one of these mystical numbers, stands for life. Also stands for the main vertebrae in the spine, but, whatever. Now, on the one hand, in this prayer, you pray for some personal stuff like health and wealth, but all the prayers that we do are all framed in the group. But what we're really praying for in this prayer that we do 3 times a day, every day, is we're praying for what we call Messiah or redemption of the world. And so we break that down into various things of what we're talking about and how that redemption breaks down, but it all ends, for those who can see the slide, the last blessing we make is for world peace. We begin with an invocation of the ancestors, and then it ends with world peace. And that's really what we're praying for. So even, yes, there's an element of whatever a person prays for, wealth, health, progeny, etc. The main thrust of the prayer is for all of humanity, and that all of humanity should benefit in a way together. And so that's what we're doing 3 times a day, every day, all of our lives. We want the redemption or Messiah, however you want to frame it, to happen. All right, that's the end of this part, which brings us to 3:43. So should we do some questions?
Do you want to do some examples?
Well, I was just going to do some more poetry, but I think let's just do I'll just get rid of the screen share so I can see what is going on in the thing. If anyone's got a question, just chuck it in the chat.
Or I have a question that I can ask here. So obviously you've got some experience in knowing about prayer and knowing about the Kabbalah. How much experience do you need to know because most of us, go through the motions without actually having any of that background knowledge. Given you do, how much more maybe different is your prayer to most people's, or how much knowledge do you need to be able to do what you do to be able to share this?
Okay, very, very good question. So obviously, prayer is a highly personal thing, but we'll leave that to one side because I'm simply presenting a particular derech, a particular way in prayer. So the truth is, the more you know about this, the better it's going to be. It's like any sport, any skill you have. To think that you can come into anything with zero knowledge and get as much out of it as coming into something with a little bit knowledge or a little bit more knowledge or a little bit more knowledge. So it's the same thing. This is a particular practice, and it requires development, and you do have to know a little bit about it. And these things I should really mention. This stuff of the vibrations and how the vibrations work in the mouth and the body and everywhere else. This is a teaching that was given to me by a Kabbalist from Jerusalem called Victoria Chana, who spent years of her life sitting with the Book of Formation. The Book of Formation explains exactly where in the mouth every different sound is made. And she sat with that for years and years, working out the correspondences and everything else. And she said to me that the way to do this for yourself is just to do it and explore. And there is no right answer. The mem doesn't necessarily really vibrate the belly. It vibrates wherever you feel it. And same with all the other letters. And her advice to me was just to feel it out yourself. The point is to be doing those vibrations so that you feel it in your body, that you feel prayer, you feel words, you feel what you're trying to say, intellectually, emotionally channeled through, and the whole system is joined in this together. So is that an answer? Some sort of answer.
What was your interest in developing this in the first place?
So when I guess when I started doing poetry, and I realized that this act of speaking out loud was so similar to these ideas that I'd known about of prayer. This emergence just seemed so obvious. So I was just doing it. Like it wasn't, I couldn't separate the two out together. Basically.
I mean, I resonate very strongly with what you say.
Hold on. Yeah. Maybe we'll get questions to come and speak to the crowd.
You don't mind if I just ramble?
No, ramble away. I'll come into shot. Yeah, ramble on.
I resonate very strongly with what Yoram says because I come from a Christian tradition. I'm very much interested in Gregorian chant, which is very much about the integration of the body and the breath and the words, which are very, because they're Latin, the sounds are very pure, the consonants are very clear, and so on. So there's really a notion of that whole body, whole mind, whole spirit experience, and also because it's done cooperatively, not cooperatively, as a body together. Many people do it together. There is that notion of a shared experience. So it's very, very similar. So thank you.
Yeah, cool. I mean, that's sort of, I'm loath to speak for anybody else's tradition, but my experience is there tend to be more similarities than not. And it's because, we all have the same body, we're all on the same planet. There's only so much variation in experience that the one system can really have. Anyone in the Zoom want to say anything? Gillian?
Yep. Listen, sometimes I do go to church, but I'm not strictly Christian. I'm a mixture of a whole lot of things. And they sing hymns in English. And I often find it just great because for years and years, I've been listening to Sanskrit chanting. And it's just a totally different experience. I mean, I can listen to a Gregorian chant, but singing Jesus loves little children, I can't say this, but it grates.
I agree.
So that's a good segue into what I'm going to present next, which is, yes, these ancient languages certainly seem to have something going on, and whether that's just our own psychosomatic projecting onto it, or whether there really is something pure to Latin, to Hebrew, to Sanskrit, I don't know. But what I do know is almost nobody in our society understands these languages. And no matter how beautiful they are and where we try and place the vibrations and wherever, if you don't understand what you're saying, it's pointless. All right? Or maybe not pointless, but the impact is reduced. And I find that even for myself, I know what the Hebrew or the Aramaic means, but hold on, I just got one in the chat. I'll just pop it up. Oh yeah, it's just it's my dad saying that he agrees with the same sentiment. That he also finds English grating on the ears.
Yeah. Although there are some English chants that I do sing on the harmonium in English that I do like, but mostly I prefer the Sanskrit.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So one of the things that I've tried to do is take certain prayers and translate them down into English, and translate them not just word for word, but these people spoke in an idiom of their time. So when they evoke certain imagery, it meant something to them. It doesn't just mean a flower or a tree. It's an idiom. It has a specific cultural context. And so I'm always trying to map those idioms back into something that means something to people here. So why don't we try one? Let me just look. Now that I can do this on Zoom, I can cheat, which is fantastic. Let's start with this one. Okay, so this is from the book of Isaiah, and I'll give the background. So again, in the Jewish tradition, every week we read a segment of the 5 books of Moses over a year-long cycle until we go through the whole year. And then in complement to that section from the books of Moses, we read another section that comes out of the books of the prophets. And so over the year, you go through the entire 5 books of Moses and selected passages of the prophets. And then on all the various festivals and different special days, there's different readings from the 5 books of Moses and then other readings from the prophets. So this one comes from the most important day of the year. This comes from the Day of Atonement. Day of Atonement in Hebrew is Yom Kippur. I need that for one of the rhymes in the piece. so yeah. And hold on, let me just flip this window back. So yeah, let me just do that. That's better. No, sorry. Again. Delivered on, and so the purpose of the Day of Atonement is to spend an entire day praying and fasting, not eating, doing all these very, very holy, ritualistic things. And ironically, this Haftarah rails against all of that completely. And so I'll just go for it. He goes, shout loudly and don't hold back. Raise your voice like a megaphone. Announce to my people their crime and to the country her sins, because they seek me day after day, desiring the knowledge of all of my ways, like a nation that once acted righteously, like a nation that never abandoned their true beliefs. They ask me for righteous judgment. They want to come closer to God, and they say, look, we're fasting, we're praying. It's Yom Kippur, we're doing everything you ask. We're all sitting here in the shul, yet on your fast days, your factories are still working and polluting. And your workers are still being oppressed. You still seek your profits. Let's see where this is. You quarrel and you brawl and you call each other names. You act disgustingly to each other. And then you come to the synagogue and you pray. If you want your voice to be heard on high, don't fast. Don't do any of this. Because do you think that the God of righteousness wants a day for privileged people to sit around and self-afflict? Pretending to be bending one's head like a reed, or dressing in black, or lying down in ashes, it all reeks of self-indulgence. Is this what you call a day for God? Yes.
It sounds like the ideal thing, try to do the right, say, make the right prayer, and then I'm going to do the wrong thing.
Oh, that's why I said it's definitely ironic. But it's this idea that we can take ancient languages and remap them back into our own. And then not just simply map the words out, but map the metaphors. Like Isaiah didn't say use a megaphone, right? But the idioms that they do use are so entrenched in the cultures that they come from that when we do these translations that are sort of traditional translations where we're trying to get accuracy, which is it's important to get accuracy, but through that accuracy, even the translation is almost lifeless because they're written in prior idiomatic structures. So this exercise is a mapping exercise to try and evoke the same energizations that these prophets wanted to evoke, right? Because imagine Isaiah's doing this, standing there on some place in the public square, and for him, this speech is a form of prayer. He's doing it. It is a full body experience for him. He's projecting this all out. So, you know, it is ironic, but it's all there. But I'll finish it. He says like this. Right, so the gentleman here has just said that he also falls into the trap of being judgmental. And this is sort of the point of what he's getting at. So he says to them, you people are a joke. He says, this is what I want. End all the unjust laws. Unchain the chains and liberate the poor and smash every suffering and end every pain. Share your food with the hungry. Bring the homeless into your homes and give the refugees a place to call their own, and clothing the people that have no clothes, and not abandoning any human beings, and understanding that we're all one single community. And do this, and then your light will shine. And then you'll break out like the dawn, and you'll be healed of every sickness. And your own righteousness will walk before you, and the Lord's glory will be your bodyguard. Then you will call out to God, and God will answer you. You will cry for help, and then God will say, I am here. If you stop the judgments and the finger pointing and the hate tweets and the spite speech, obviously Isaiah didn't refer to Twitter. If you open your heart to the hungry and for those who are afflicted, to provide abundantly, then your light will shine in the darkness, and your gloom will become like the noon. The Lord will guide you continually and provide for you, even in the driest deserts. He will rescue your bones. You will be like a watered garden, like a spring of water that never runs dry, or like a packet of Tim Tams that never runs out. And ancient cities will be rebuilt on your account, and the foundations of generations past you will restore. You will be called the mender of the broken cities and the restorer of the livable communities. And I will let you ride on the heights of the earth, and I will sustain you with the bounty of the land, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. Amen. Nice. All right. All right, we've got another in the chat. Let's just see what it says. Oh, no, it was the same one we had before. All right, we'll stop here for a minute. Any other questions?
How do you choose which readings or which prayers or which parts of scripture to write a translation on?
What a great question. So the answer to that's pretty unremarkable and simplistic, which is that there's always a reason. So this one comes from a performance I did about a year ago. Because of lockdown, we conducted some services online, and I just looked through the liturgy to go, what are the best bits to do poems on? And so a couple of them jumped out as being obvious choices, and it's nothing it's nothing more than that. Yeah. No, we're good. Anyone in the...
So what differentiates a place of poetry from a place of prayer? Differentiation.
Okay, the question was what differentiates a place of poetry from a place of prayer. So if you're an extremist like myself, you'd say almost nothing. But I mean, strictly speaking, I'm not sure there really is a difference, but you would say that usually in synagogues, the prayer is directed at, every definition I've got in my brain is coming back to, no, they're quite similar. I suppose the main difference, at least with Jewish prayer, is the prescription versus original material. Generally, in certainly contemporary poetry circles, the idea is, I'm a person, I've got my thoughts about the world, I will express what I feel in my words. What we're doing is taking words from tradition that have been highly edited and weighed, and like this was not a vomit draft of just a blurt out on the phone while you're on a tram. These prayers, every single letter of them has been highly specifically put there. And by doing them, you're doing the same thing that everybody in the world is doing and all your ancestors have done as well. So you're linking into that tradition. Now, again, I'm not saying that one's better or one's worse. They're just different modalities of expression, of one using the traditional forms to still, I mean, you obviously, everyone, no matter what words they say, what's going on in the brain when you're thinking about those words is going to be completely different for every human being in the world, right? Even for Jewish people who are saying the exact same words, the exact same lines, the actual thought structures that are going on in your brain, they're always going to be different, right? So there's always going to be that individuality. But it seems to me, at least in the contemporary poetry scene, it's really about expressing your original ideas and thoughts. And what we're doing in prayer is using a prescribed text so that we're all on the same page together. We're all navigating through a single sort of medium together. Is that somewhat of an answer? All right, lovely.
And I think the notion of it referring to your ancestors is very important. And the issue of Gregorian chant, to give an example, is very similar. It's not written by any one person. It's inspired way back and then fine-tuned by the community.
Right.
Over many, many hundreds of years.
So I'll just repeat that. Don't know how the sound works, but what's her name? Susan. Susan just brought in this idea that Gregorian chants also it's a shared text that, again, the authors aren't even known, and that there was a process of refinement over the years. And again, this idea, there's two poles between using set text and coming up with original material. And again, neither of them are necessarily correct. They're just two different modalities of doing stuff. So should we do one more poem and then sort of start wrapping up? All right, so this is one, I've only been working on this for a little while. I don't even have it up on the screen to cheat from. So maybe I'll put it on my phone so I can cheat on it if I need to. We'll do that. We'll just do a little cheat. But I kind of know this one. It's weird not having performed in a year and a half. I'm rusty on the new material. What am I looking for? So this. Oh.
On that note, when you do slam poetry, do you need to remember it, or are you allowed to refer to notes?
So the question that was asked is, with slam poetry, can you read it off a phone or a sheet, or do you have to know it off by heart? From my experience, most people read off something. I personally prefer, when I can, to try and learn things by heart. It's just a thing that I prefer, but it's probably like half-ish on the scene. Just depends on where you are and what the level of competition is. And yeah, it's in slam poetry, just to be really specific, slam poetry technically refers to a style of competition where the judges are chosen from the audience at random. So they're almost deliberately chosen without a background in poetry. So they're kind of scoring raw. And then the competition proceeds through that scoring mechanism and to sort of knock people out until you get to a winner. And technically, that's all slam is. It actually has nothing to do with style or form or anything else. It's technically a type of competition. However, that type of competition ends up producing a particular form, because especially when you're dealing with judges or audiences that don't know all the nuances, you kind of have to hit them straight in the face, right? So it lends itself to a very, all out there, quite, what's the word? Effusive form for those reasons. But it is about the way the competition itself runs. So, yes, we have from Frida.
Right. I understand how you feel about prescribed prayer, but my comment is that it arose out of necessity. People found it difficult to know how to express their thoughts in prayer. So that's really why it's there. And usually there's a little bit of space where you can put your own prayer and your own words in. But it did rise out of necessity.
I think that's
there is that place for it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a brilliant point. There's obviously a necessity where some people aren't great at articulating themselves and having that set text. And as Frida pointed out, in the schema of the Jewish prayer system are little pockets where you can add your own personal prayers. So there's always that interplay between the set text and then just the individual expression. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Okay, so this piece is called Elijah Opened. It's a piece that is from the Kabbalistic tradition. It's not said in every single Jewish synagogue and rite. It's only in the Sephardic rite and the Hasidic rite. So it's not across the board, but it's something that I came across in the last couple of months, and I can't even put my finger on what it is about it that's so whatever, but there's something about this thing. So I'll give you the background. So the Jewish people had a massive war against the Roman Empire in about 135 AD, and they lost catastrophically. And by the end of the war, everything was destroyed. The hundreds of thousands had been killed, hundreds of thousands more sold into slavery across the empire. The Shabbat got banned, circumcision got banned, learning Torah got banned, and the rabbis all had to go into hiding. So one of the rabbis who went into hiding was a guy called Shimon Bar Yochai. Him and his son went and hid themselves in a cave. And in that cave, a miracle was performed for them. A tree grew with carobs that they could eat, and a little stream sort of just popped up that they could drink from. And then every single day, Elijah the prophet would materialize in front of them and teach them the mysteries. And this went on for 13 years. At the end of the 13 years, they emerge out of the cave, and now they can they kind of have superpowers. So they wander around the country in this desolated, ruined place, and they're offering comfort and help, and they begin to gather the last remaining great sages until they build this group. And once they've built the group, they teach the group what they learnt in the cave until finally the group are ready, and they're all sitting there, and then Elijah turns up again. And he goes, now you're ready for the next level of revelation. It was too much even for the cave. So he says like this. So Elijah opens up a channel and he says, endless light. You are everything. You cannot be counted. You encompass universes, and you inhere inside of the atoms, and no thought can grasp you at all. And you are the one that's affected the 10 transformations that we call the 10 emanations, through which you govern the hidden worlds that are not revealed, and the worlds that are revealed, and within the endless light is concealed from human beings. And you are the one that binds them, and you are the one who unifies them. And since you are inside them, anyone who supposes any separation between each and any of these 10 emanations is as if they've supposed a separation within you. And these 10 emanations proceed according to a configuration, a 3-channeled structure, a channel that projects, and a channel that retracts, and a channel that mediates between. And you rule over all of them, and nothing rules over you. Not in the higher realms or the lower realms or in any of the sides. And garments you made for them from which fly forth the souls of human beings. And a number of bodies you fixed for them that we call the bodies relative to the garments that wrap around them, and they flow in the following order. Giving is through the right hand, and restraining is through the left, and it harmonizes through the torso. Domination through the right leg, and gratitude through the left. Transmitted out through the penis. Manifestation is through the openings, the mouth and the womb. And we call it the Torah of the openings. Intuition is the right brain, and we call it inner thought. Calculation is the left brain, and through it consciousness comprehends. And on these two it is written, the hidden things are for the Lord your God. The crown, the supernal will is the will of manifestation. As it says, he can tell the very end from the very beginning, and it is the casing of the skull. And within them and through them flow the divine vibration, that emerges from the planes of emanation. That's the healing light of rectification. And it goes Yah and Ha and Whoa and Ha. And it's like the watering of a tree through its branches and its boughs, like the water that infuses into a tree, and the tree will grow through that very infusion, endless light. You are the cause of all causes and the reason of all reasons. And you irrigate the tree through the primordial flow. And that flow is like a life force into a body. It's like the soul in a body, but of you there is no imagining and no likeness of anything that is within us or without. And you created the heavens and the earth, and you affected within them the sun and the moon and the planets and the constellations, and on the earth the trees and the vegetations of the Garden of Eden, and the herbs and the animals and the birds and the fishes and the herds and the human beings. All to show how all the patterns present in nature correspond to all the patterns of the supernal realms, and how the patterns of the supernal realms and our physical realms correspond to each other, and how the patterns of the physical realms and the higher realms all merge in correspondence, and nobody knows you at all. And without you, there can be no correspondence between the higher realms and the lower realms, and you are the partner of everything. We'll end at that. All righty. I think on that note.
Well, I have a question before.
Hold on.
Well, you're very much a performer. So my question is, how much of this could you do if you couldn't use your hands? I noticed that that's a big part of how you perform. And does that do something to you? Is that part of your performance?
Okay, very, very good question. I do use my hands a lot. Some people do find it a little distracting. It's just so. What the scientists have figured out is that the brain and the hand come as a unit, and that we articulate through the mouth in the same way that we articulate through the hand. And the brain and the hand are very much joined together. Now, in the Jewish tradition, as Alex was alluding to before, and as I was talking about, we wear these leather boxes, one on the head and one on the arm, because we're linking the brain to the hand. Now, the hand is the actual tool of manifestation and interaction between the self and reality. And so when we talk about this full body integration, yes, there's the belly and the brain integrated through the voice, but the other way the whole system integrates is through the hands. And so I find that in order to really embody something, I need to fully embody it through the entire system. Now, again, I'm not making any recommendations here. All this is a practice from whatever part of it you want to pinch something. It's open smorgasbord, right? No problem there. And so are the hands absolutely essential? It's part of my personal style. Like I said, I feel that because of that intimacy of the brain-hand connection and the fact that the tefillin map that brain-hand connection, there is that when we say, so one of the things we say in Judaism before a lot of prayers is a verse from the, must be from Psalms. It's in Hebrew, which means, may the sweetness of the Lord be, may the sweetness of the Lord be upon us, and may the work of our hands be manifested before us, and may the work of our hands be manifested by God. And so we're always talking about, because the hands is really how you do stuff in the world. So this paradigm of prayer, that it's a full self-energization system, if you're not bringing the hands into it, you're missing something. Now, again, it's not across the board. It's, it's just, they're just things, they're just tools that if they help you and they help you do whatever it is that you want to do with these tools, then they work. But yeah, not crucial.
In some ways, some people when they pray, they also bow a lot. That's part of it. That's part of also that full body manifestation. That's probably part of the same.
Okay.
Probably part of the same thing.
Very good. Let me just talk to that to a second.
Yeah.
In another version of this, we actually go through some of the prayers. So one of the things we do in that final prayer of the 18 is it's done standing. It's done in sort of, you put your feet straight together. The idea of that is that, I I didn't look up the source, so I'm pulling this off the top of my head. But the idea is that in the Jewish tradition, angels have one leg. And so when you're doing this prayer, you're imitating angels. Now, in the ancient times, they used to stand absolutely perfectly straight. And they would stand there like that during the prayer. About 200 years ago, this thing that we call the Hasidic Revolution happened. Now, one of the main innovations of the Hasidim that then spread to many other streams of Judaism is instead of standing still, you now start moving around. There's the back and forward moving, there's side to side, there's like banging their head and going crazy. You can go and see all variants of this kind of thing. And I believe one of the reasons it did catch like wildfire is because it makes so much sense to bring that rhythmic motion and the kind of trances you can sort of get yourself into as opposed to standing perfectly straight. Now, there are some groups who still preserve the ancient tradition and do stand perfectly straight, but almost every stream in Judaism now has incorporated some version of the moving around into their mainstream practice. So yeah, Susan?
Well,
Coming to shot.
I just wanted to support what you said about the role of the hands. And there's a prayer that comes from the Eucharistic prayer in the Catholic tradition, which says, fruit of the vine and work of human hands. And it's that marriage that makes the particular Eucharist.
Awesome. Lovely. Thank you.
Okay. Well, as Yoram said, that pretty much comes to the end of our time together. Are you performing again? Can people see you somewhere?
So I'm performing on next week on Jewish Festival of Shavuot. What's that in? Pentecost, I believe. And so that'll be at the Young Jewish Professionals Dinner at Hamayan. I'll be doing storytelling there. And then I'm possibly on the bill later that night to do more poetry, but there's still...
other than that, anywhere else?
Not coming up immediately.
Okay. But
we're getting back after COVID, you know, one step at a time.
And as Yoram said, he performed last year online as part of an online synagogue service, which is where I saw him do this kind of stuff. I've known Yoram for many years, but I was particularly taken by his performances during those synagogue services. And in fact, despite the fact that I've been going to synagogue for a long time, I was more inspired by some of those performances online than I've been when I come into a building like this and pray in an actual service. So I think because you know it and because you embody it and because you understand it possibly definitely better than I do and possibly better than most people, I think you're able to give over in such a way that we've all learned something. I've been getting text actually from some of the people online because I'm not there, saying how wonderful this has been. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Yoram. Thank you, everyone, for coming on board. And in the meantime, I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day, the rest of their Mother's Day, if they're still having Mother's Day events. And happy Shavuot for those who celebrate next week, Pentecost. And we'll see you at our next event shortly. Thank you very much.